what should the Dallas Mavericks do in the offseason? Of all the teams we've sort of touched upon so far, I think this could be the most contentious one. I think there's so many options and potential and decisions that the Mavs will need to make this offseason. And I'm going to start with number one here. You trade Kyrie. I think I've been fairly clear with my thoughts that I don't think Kyrie and Luka work. I personally don't feel like as a fan, I want to see another season of that. Hey, look, maybe I will. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Okay, but Kyrie and Luka winning a ring together as a 1-2 backcourt just doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense. Okay, so you trade Kyrie, and I don't know what that looks like. Obviously, and I think he can walk obviously in free agency too without it obviously getting anything back as well. So you've got you've got a few options to look at there, whether you're looking at picks or players. Look, I don't think that's too important. In honesty, if you get something back for value for him, that's great, but you don't need him. I think that's the first part. The second part here is that the Luka is clearly your franchise cornerstone. You follow the LeBron model, all right, where you surround this superstar generational talent with shooters. Okay, because Luka, as much as he does like to bomb it from the three, is not the most exceptional shooter. All right, he's best at creating options. He's best on creating, obviously, by getting into the paint. And the more you can spread the floor for him, the more he can go to work. So again, you look at the roster there that the Mavs have. There are no real exceptional shooters. At best, you probably say Tim Hardaway Jr. is a shooter, but half the time you look at his box score and he shoots like 2 from 10, and you sort of feel like they could look for more talented shooters there to surround around Luka. The third spot here is that you play Christian Wood or you trade him. That was a really interesting decision that happened last year. I don't know how much you sort of followed the Mavs rotation, but Christian Wood sort of took a while to get going with his new team. And then he had a real productive patch in the middle of the year, around the middle of the year. And the Mavs were winning. The Mavs were winning and rolling along at that point. Then he got injured and he was out for maybe, I don't know, 20 games or so like that. And then at that same point, Kyrie came in and they made a few sort of, changes and so on and so forth. And then, there was a whole different lineup to sort of factor in. And it was interesting when he came back from injury that basically had fallen out of rotation. Okay. And I know it's not like, he's not necessarily, the most focused defensive player. Sometimes that's probably one of his biggest knock. He's often a bit of a go instant offense sort of, four-man in that sort of sense. But he does help teams to win if you can find the right spot to play him. And I think the Mavs need to make a decision here. You're either going to play him or you're going to get something for him. So look, at the end of the day here, the trade here sort of falls in line with let's continue to put some shooters around Luka. I've got Bertans, and obviously I'm not saying that this other team wants Bertans or anything like that, but I'm saying trade Bertans for Buddy Hield, and you'll take Buddy Hield, obviously 40%, career free 3-point shooter there. If you could put him on one side and Tim Hardaway Jr. on another side, you're starting now to stockpile your shooters and really surround Luka with that sort of talent.
I'm a little disappointed because that trade makes no sense for Indiana. And Buddy Hield is quite a highly sought after package. In
It
fact,
doesn't need to
it
make
was
sense for Indiana. We're talking about the
no,
Mavs.
I do. No, I think that's where you and I differ in our process. Whether or not people believe that we're making good or bad calls, just know that I'm really putting in the effort to make sure that both teams could legitimately do this trade. So that's fine. We both agree that Luka is the cornerstone. Unsurprising there. There's so much talent, but the Mavs are such a fascinating team because they are. You probably noticed this when you went on the trade machine. They're quite lugged on contracts. So, the Kristaps trade brought over Tim Hardaway Jr., and now that's quite a high contract. And then to moving into Washington brought over the Spencer Dinwiddie and the Bertans contract. And then if you're keeping up with me, the Spencer Dinwiddie contract went over to Brooklyn, but they also had to give up the Dorian Finney-Smith. And, all of a sudden it's just like, whoa, like you could just got a lot of contracts and you're trading and there's no draft picks and there's all these things. What we're in agreement with as well, you do not need Kyrie. So I'm either like you don't re-sign him and you just let it walk and you do the risky thing of, hey, you just freed up cap space and you lost things for it. I said at the trade deadline that was done because it buys them cap space on players that they would have otherwise been tied to for many more years. But you've obviously mentioned aside from trade, I'm not saying this is going to happen. This is not my intent, but I'm sure we can both imagine that perhaps D'Angelo Russell is a Dallas Maverick because the sign and trade to the Lakers has to go through. I'm not saying that's a logical thing. What I'm saying is Dallas are going to be put in a position where letting Kyrie walk for nothing is just not the smart business move, and getting something back is the play. And I can see that happening. That's not my move. I'd let Kyrie walk for nothing at this point. But here's one that I could see happening. McGee and Maxi Kleber. You got a backup center and you've got a stretch four. I think you trade them for Yusuf Nurkic from Portland because that strengthens up your center position because the center position for Dallas is actually one of their worst. And Dwight Powell is an athletic lob catcher at best. He is not a defensive bruiser in the key for that. They didn't play McGee. Maxi Kleber is a good 3-point shooter, but ultimately, it's one of those things where you've got to get off somehow and you've got to give Portland a reason to take it. For Portland, they get, a bit of a bet in McGee, and they get a stretch for Kleber. Whether or not you like it, it is what it is. But this is the other one. This is a weird thing to say. Wait. You wait till the mid-season and you see what Luka's doing this current season. You see what other teams are doing and what can you move thereafter because Dallas are really quite limited in the paths that they can take. And that's how I felt when I was constructing this.
I'm going to ask you because you sort of pitched that trade. Are you saying you think a center like Nurkic is the sort of player that you would pair with Luka?
I think the way that I viewed it was Dallas is defensively compromised in terms of interior paint. So they have a bad interior defensive rating. And Yusuf Nurkic, obviously with the asterisks of can he stay healthy, it's he's going to anchor down the paint just a little bit better. Offensively, I don't think you need to think about offense as much with Luka because ultimately the scheme is let Luka have his 30 and have some shooters around him, and that's all good. So I thought of it more from a defensive mindset of that will just help that side of the court a bit more. And JaVale McGee never got playing time for whatever reason. So it's something. But here's the extra caveat that I've been thinking about in a couple of these trades. Dallas are locked in for another 2 to 3 years with this current constructed roster. That's why the trades need to occur to really open up something for them. Yusuf Nurkic's contract expires in 2, and the players that they're sending out expire in 3 or 4. So it's all about freeing up that cap space because we know what this team is currently constructed. It's not a playoff team, and if it is a playoff team, it dependent on Luka going there, and they're not going to get it. So anyone they bring back, you try something new with someone you bring back, but you hopefully bring back someone with a smaller contract duration so that you can do something different in a year or two's time. It's all about trying to maximize whatever window you have with Luka because right now, if they just rolled this team back, they're still locked into this team for another like 2 seasons, which is already proven to be unsuccessful. So you need to keep doing moves to try to do something different. It's very similar to the Cleveland and LeBron days where they just, I don't envy Dallas Mavericks because they're trying to do moves for Luka because there is this time constraint that he's so good so early, right now. But they don't have the flexibility to do it.
Yeah, well, look, I guess that's part of the whole Mavs conundrum, isn't it? Ultimately, through a bunch of decisions that they made throughout the years, it sort of led to this sort of logjam to a certain extent of bloated contracts that aren't really producing in this, well, ultimately in the wins column. I guess. Look, I don't. Your trade's not shocking. Don't get me wrong. Nurkic is a talent. I just don't think. I'm just trying to think back to like the Cavs days and when LeBron was winning rings, or even with yeah, it's tough to compare that because LeBron obviously was winning rings and then he was surrounded by superstar friends he recruited. So it's like, who's Luka's best friend, Jokic. Like, you know what I mean? I don't know. Like I don't know. I'm not really sure who knows, right? But I guess it's a tough one because I think like I said, I would be testing the LeBron model more so, but really just surrounding shooters. So I'm thinking, in on paper, Kleber's like that sort of perfect candidate. He can shoot the three. All right, Bertans on paper, in theory, was supposed to be that perfect candidate too. Okay, that's why they signed him and gave him all that money, wasn't it? Okay, but it sort of hasn't worked out. And I guess, it's a real conundrum here that is it the players that have not met the roles because these players definitely have liability, especially on the defensive end, and guarding players of athletic ability, or is it not the right model? And if it's not the right model, that really becomes $1 million question there. And then what is the right model to build around Luka? And that's a real challenge that's been going now for since he's come into the league ultimately.
This is Two Guys with Spare Time. I'm Fowles, this is Nick. You're probably a basketball fan like us, so hopefully you can throw us an assist and giving our video a like and subscribing to our channel.
And if you got thoughts, feelings, or even some suggestions, please put them down in the comment section below. And thank you for using your spare time to watch us in our spare time.